Okay, we are live as can be. It is Monday, the 23rd of June, 2025, day after the massive Dublin protest, anti-government, anti-immigration protest, fascist gathering, depending on who you're listening to. This one did actually make the news, the mainstream media news, not just the alternate media news, but it made the mainstream media news. Although I noticed it was lumped in along with the counter protest. And of course, they lowballed the numbers and they lowballed the figures of the attendees at the event yesterday in Dublin. Welcome to the first of hopefully a few dozen anyway. Let's try and aim for a few dozen people coming in here tonight. Roll me shadow. Hey Rick, how you doing? Saoirse Ahern, thank you for joining us again tonight. Catherine O'Connell in the house. Grim Say is in there. Johnny Blue is in there. Stan is in there. Hi Rick. Hope you're grand. I am. I'm feeling good. At least I think I'm feeling good. I'm still vertical. I'm still breathing. Still got all my own teeth. Eyesight's not the greatest at the minute, but what are you going to do about it? I should really have my glasses on for this, but the stalks get stuck in behind these big earphones. And I've got little in-ear monitors, but I don't like them. I like these big, clumsy ones. They're comfortable. So that's what I'm going to wear. So I'm going to have to squint again when I'm reading the comments. Catherine O'Connell, Lynn Boyo the Mun. Not sure if that you're a relative of mine, but welcome again. Welcome all. Shawnee 59. Good evening from Morocco. Morocco, are you in the right place, Shawnee? I hope you are. Even if you're not, you're welcome. If this is a beautiful mistake, you're welcome. Although you've got a little shamrock in there in your message, so I think you are in the right place. Connect Dub said the show or the gathering yesterday was bigger than last time. It was much better organized in terms of sound, etc. But are these protests enough? Well, that's the question that we're going to address here tonight. And I'm going to be joined shortly by John Wilson. And last week we did a preliminary to Dublin, and we said, let's wait, let's see how it goes, and then let's look at what happens next. You know, marching the streets is great. It's great to show people how many people feel. It's good to give you a boost. It's good to give you encouragement and get you energized. But is it enough in and of itself? These protests can come into or come under a lot of criticism to say, well, walking the streets of Letterkenny is not going to change the world. Walking the streets of Sligo is not going to change anything. Walking the streets of Dublin, the government aren't taking any notice. They are. They may not acknowledge it, but just because somebody doesn't acknowledge something doesn't mean to say that they're not noticing it. And certainly they're taking note of the numbers and the frequency these protests are happening and the fact that numbers seem to be growing with them. So they would be very foolish not to be concerned about this. Niall McConnell in the chat. Welcome this evening, Niall. Dale G, very simple and very powerful comment from Dale G. He says, we need direct action. I agree, Dale G, and I'm sure there's a lot of silent noddings of the head going on in this live stream as well. Direct action is needed. But what does that look like? What form can that take that doesn't land everybody in prison or with criminal records and take us off the streets where we need to be in the first place? Okay, so how can we do that? What needs to be done in terms of direct action? If simple street protests on their own are not enough, we're also going to discuss options here tonight. We're just throwing ideas out there, and feel free to leave your thoughts, comments, and opinions here. And by the way, there's a lot of people in the chat already. There's a lot of people on the stream already. So if I miss a comment or I miss what someone has to say, I'm not trying to be rude or I'm not ignoring anybody. promise you I'm not ignoring anybody, but sometimes in a break, in me talking or a break when I'm talking with John, I'll spot a comment and I'll bring it up here. But, you know, this is ongoing, guys and girls, boys and girls, women and men. This is ongoing. This isn't going away anytime soon. So we need to keep refining our approach and we need to keep intensifying our approach. But the good thing is there seems to be momentum behind what we're doing at the moment. So yes, Dale G, to get back to what you had said, we do need direct action. Jamie says, realistically, our prisons are well overcrowded. So what would they do with all? That's correct also. But when you think about this just for 1 minute. The power, the psychology behind how the government keeps a people in their place. There's how many people acting as so-called public servants in the Dáil? How many people are acting as so-called public servants in the Dáil? How many members of the Gardaí are there? How many guards are there? How many members are there in the Irish Army? You know, the people vastly outnumber the powers that be as they were. But compliance and herd mentality keeps people in their place. And by the way, I'm not advocating breaking the law or overrunning anything or doing anything wrong, lest I be accused of that. But yes, you're right. The prisons are overcrowded. What would they do with us? And that comes along with the belief that many people have that camps are being constructed around Ireland. Large camps. And at the minute, they say they're to hold, you know, an overspill of refugees or asylum seekers. But some people have the belief that, well, hang on, could they be used to keep us interned? Could there be large internment camps that have sprang up? You know, it's happened before in Ireland during the Troubles. You know, Long Kesh, Maze Prison, which was only a few miles from where I lived, was huge internment camp. People were rounded up from their houses and held there for years, in some cases without any trial, just on suspicion of going against the government or rebelling against the government or committing terrorist offenses. So don't think that internment can't happen or it wouldn't happen in Ireland. It's happened in the very recent past. There might even be people listening to me here who have been at the wrong side of it. So you've got to bear that in mind as well. Nobody in uniform is on the side of the people, says Stephen Ross. Thank you for your comments, Stephen. And it's nice to see you on the chat here tonight. I remember months ago you saying your health wasn't the greatest. Hopefully you're feeling a lot better than you were back then. Irish Countryman, there's I just missed your comment there. I just missed your comment to do wars in the Middle East or wars coming up that are used to flood countries with refugees. That's another thing that I'll be discussing with John here tonight. I want to look at how this escalation in Iran, I'm not looking at that conflict. I'm not looking at what America's done or hasn't done. I'm looking at what the implications might be for Ireland, given that when Ukraine and Russia kicked off, how many people piled in to Ireland at that point, or how many Syrian refugees have came over here when there's any, or Afghans, when there's any major conflict there. You better believe there's just going to be a lot of people moving through Europe as a result of refugee status being sought, for example, for an escalating land war in Iran. And they're going to be coming from the Middle East, from Saudi Arabia area, and they're going to be heading across Europe, and they're going to land in the best place for them. And of course, we all know that Ireland has been monikered or has adopted the nickname Treasure Island for very, very good reason. And yeah, we've got to keep our eyes on that one too. Too fecking many. That's how many people have come here. Well, Sean, who am I to disagree with you, my friend? The thing is, there's a lot of people don't agree with you. They say Ireland is not full. There's still plenty of capacity here. We only have, between 5 and 7 million people between the north and the south. Plenty of space. Look at all those green fields. Plenty of space. The government are constructing, buying up state property now to use them as IPAS centres, as refugee centres, etc. So, yeah, you may think there's too many. Sean. Many people on here tonight may agree with you, but the question is that what the masses believe, or is that what the masses think? So think about that one as well. Paulo says, just what we need, loads of Iranians. You see, the thing is, Paul, it's not just going to be Iranians. You know, the Micheál Martin, Simon Harris, and the politicians in Stormont, especially coming from the Sinn Féin side and the SDLP side, from the nationalist side, they're just on and on about Gaza, 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 Gaza. Palestine, Palestine, Palestine. So there could be a huge influx coming in. Could be. It's not guaranteed. So I'm just making that clear. But there could be a huge influx coming in here from many places in the Middle East. You know, a lot of Yemenis could be piling over here too, if this keeps going the way that it is. So let's say if you were in Dublin yesterday, and I know many of you would have been, or you'd have certainly seen the footage that's been released online. What were your views on it? The weather wasn't as good as it was in April. I think 26th of April was the last time, a glorious day, but the rain stayed off for most of yesterday. There was a stage constructed this time. There was a covering over the stage. There was security barriers. It looked like it was better marshaled. The sound system was better. They had more speakers on there as well. There was a real eclectic mix of speakers on there, which went down very, very well with very, very many people. So what were your views on it yesterday? If you were in attendance, did it give you a boost? Were you happy with the content of the speech, or were you left wanting more when it comes to actual solutions that were or were not proposed from the main stage or from some of the main speakers? So again, I'm just throwing that out there. I want to know what your thoughts on this are in particular. And also, John will be hopping on if he's listening in. John, if you're listening in now, actually feel free to hop on and I will introduce you. We'll have nearly 400 in the chat at the minute, which is ample and very, very surprising, if the truth be told, for 8 o'clock on a Monday night. So, Tom, let's see what Tom said. Ireland is a Christian island and country that will not be changing, nor will behavior other than our morals and faith be tolerated. And again, Tom, an amen to that from me. The question is that what your friends and neighbours think? Maybe some of your own family think? Is that what your local elected representatives think? Or will the push be on ever harder at this time for diversity or for cultural enrichment, whichever terminology that you want to put on it? So Mark Halpin, just getting some feedback here about the attendance yesterday. I went by bus. I tried to get the train, but Irish Rail website on Thursday night stated that they sold out all 4 trains Sunday morning, Waterford to Dublin line. Did anybody else notice that? Could have been an issue there with just bad planning on the rail operator's part, or could have been sold out. A lot of people were heading down that way on the Sunday. Also worth considering, if you're in groups, Facebook groups, that if there is a car going down from your town, or you can hire a minibus. I know there was a squad, I believe, on Saturday from Carrickmacross hired a minibus, and they headed down together. They pitted together, chipped in together, and they hired a minibus, picked them all up from one spot, dropped them all off, brought them all back home again. If there are no trains, or you can't get trains, or you can't even get a lift, it's worth maybe considering pooling your resources with other people that live in your community and hiring a bus. And it's a very comfortable way to travel as well. It means you're not having to deal with the great unwashed general public. Hello and good evening to everyone in the chat, says John Platt. I watched Freedom Dad's video with Michelle, a couple social media reporter from across the border south of Ireland, where he explained to her about Ballymena. Indeed, and believe it or not, I bumped into him today earlier on. He was having a coffee, and I just happened to be out with my wife having a cup of coffee, and I actually bumped into Freedom Dad. And yeah, actually saw him in the flesh. We were sitting behind each other. I was with my wife, of course, so she takes priority over everyone, including Freedom Dad. But yeah, just you mentioned that, John. I actually bumped into him earlier on today in the place that he lives. So who else have we got in here? Salute to all, says Rumple F Skin. We can't stop until we secure a future for our children. Amen. That's what it all boils down to. That's what it all boils down to. We need to secure Ireland's borders, and we need to secure Ireland's infrastructure, if not for our own sakes, but surely for the sake of our children. And even if you don't have children, if you're looking out and you're in public and you see those kids in prams and you see those little kids running around in parks playing, you should have a heart for the next generation. You should have a heart for your own people. You should have a heart for ensuring that your own homeland and your own hometown is secure, not just for you, because you're going to get old too. We're going to be pensioners. I'm going to be a pensioner in about 10 years. I'll be shuffling around the local park. I would like to think it's going to be safe to do that. But then again, who can tell? Let's see what else we've got in here. Just going to check, make sure there's no issues with John. I've sent him a link, and this is the first time I will have invited a guest on here in the shape and form of John Wilson. So hopefully he will be joining me very shortly. Lady of Era, evening all. Hey, Cam D, how are you keeping? Welcome back. Lady of Era, nice to have you back here again this evening, and plenty more people still piling into the chat. Counter-protest, yes, let's look at counter-protest, because this is another thing. It would be great to have more music and create a festive feeling. We smile, laugh. What about singing and dancing? We are not lefties. Well, that's true, but then again, Declan, allow me to play devil's advocate here. Some people think these marches should be super serious, super focused, and have a real focused political agenda on there. Other people think they should be more lighthearted. If I'm not mistaken, and correct me if I'm wrong, there was, how would you say, a rousing atmosphere there yesterday. From what I have seen, there were some great songs being sang, some great chants being led, everybody joining in the crowd. The atmosphere was good. So I do believe maybe it was the perfect balance between, how would you say, party atmosphere and full-on political heads, rebellion heads being on there. Maybe the balance was being perfectly struck yesterday. So you can tell me what you think on that. Mousy is great crack, says Honora Brennan. Has the mouse joined the live chat? I haven't seen him in there. Mouse, if you're in, I apologize for missing you in there. And if he is in, then yes, indeed, an amen to that. He is indeed great crack. In my opinion, Sheepdog says, I do not give any credence to counter-protesters. Just ignore the feckers. Yeah, that's true. Let's be honest. They were grossly outnumbered the last time. And from what I saw yesterday, they were also grossly outnumbered, bearing in mind many of them are there because they're being paid. They're paid agitators. They're being funded by NGOs. And yeah, that seems to be the state of play. Let me see. John's sending me a little message. Oh, he says he's waiting. So just allow me to check. John, be patient, please. I'm trying to figure out how I get you in here. So the good news is John is there. The bad news is I don't know how to let him in. So let's see. Just keep talking amongst yourselves here. Invite. Let me see. Present. I can't see. If anybody can leave a message in here, my apologies for my, I would just say, lack of professionalism here, but I can't see where I can get John in here. John, if you're listening, hit a join button. I'm not sure if you can hit the join button, but I'm looking for a way to bring you in. I'm looking for a way to bring you in, but I can't see you anywhere. And I'm hoping you do come up because there's a lot of stuff that I want to talk to you about. So, John Wilson, let's see, present, settings, guests. No, I don't see you, John. I don't see you. Make sure you're using the Google Chrome browser and try joining. Catherine O'Connell says no join button showing. So I'm not sure who that's in relation to, if that's you, John, but I could send you another invite here. Sorry about this, folks. Invite, email. No, I don't see it. I don't see it. Give me a message there, John, on the WhatsApp, and let me know if you can see a join button, or if you can hit the link on your email, just so I know not to send another one out. Maybe it's a problem at my end here. So let's look at some more comments. Let's see. Collectively, we must enact a law that no flag other than the Irish flag be flown on Irish soil. Please advise how to go about doing this. Well, there he is. John Wilson is in the house. Well, just before I bring John in there, there's very few countries in the world, especially if you go to the Middle East, you go to Africa, you cannot fly a flag in a public place or over a government building unless it's the flag of that country. And in fact, in doing so, we get you arrested and probably severely beaten. So it's crazy to think that Ireland seems to be an exception to the rule on that one. But have John in here, so let me bring him on. There he is, John Wilson.
Good evening, Rick. Greetings from beautiful County Cavan. Are you aware, Rick, that in Cavan we have a lake for every day of the year, and even in a leap year, I'm sure we can find one for you, but that's enough frivolity for one evening.
I'm glad that you've connected. I really do. Thank God you've connected, but I'm just changing the audio here to make sure that you come in through my headphone speakers, which you hopefully are now doing. So welcome, Mr. Wilson. Thank you for joining us. How is Cavan tonight?
Very dark. It's more like an October evening, a late October evening, than a lovely sunny June evening.
Well, it seems to be very changeable. The first few times we met each other was down in a very sunny Carrickmacross, actually, and the weather has been up and down like a proverbial yo-yo ever since. But I thank you for coming on. I wanted to get you on for a couple of reasons. We had a conversation last week before the weekend protest, and obviously we were speculating at that point. Will it be a success? Will it be a damn squib? Will it be better organized? Will it not? Will it be better attended? Will it not? Will there be solutions offered? Will there not? Will it be more of the same? Well, the weekend has now come and gone. We're kind of still fresh off of it. It's Monday night. So you were in attendance. So I suppose first and foremost, give us your thoughts on it, on the day in general, before we get into specifics.
There was a great crowd there. I met people from Mallinhead, from Cork, from Wexford, from Carrickmacross, from RD, from every part of the country. But the reality is that there are 2.1 million people living in Dublin, in the greater Dublin area, which includes County Dublin. There are in excess of 590,000 people living in Dublin city centre alone. Now, it was a great crowd. There were tens of thousands of people there, but not nearly enough. And the mood music changed. I noticed that the mood music has changed among many of the people protesting yesterday. They are not happy with just marching anymore. They want a plan of action put in place, a peaceful plan of action. Especially people of my age and older, people in in their early 60s, late 60s, and into their 70s. They're the most vociferous people. They want an action plan put in place. They're no longer willing to march up and down the roads. They're no longer willing to march up to the top of a hill and march and be marched back down again. I think I've mentioned to you several times about putting in place, a coherent leadership structure in this movement, and that's what we need, and we need it now more than ever. People are fed up just marching. Now, another big change from me I noticed yesterday was several ex-members of Garda Síochána approached me of different ranks, ex-Garda members that held various ranks in Garda Síochána. That's a change. That's something that's a big change now, as far as I'm concerned.
When you say they approached you, by the way, for anyone listening in, John was a long-serving member of Garda Síochána back in the glory days. He was a whistleblower for the Guards. He's now retired, obviously, and since your retirement, obviously you're a very outspoken character. You speak your mind. You're not afraid to speak your mind loudly and clearly and in public places. So when you say you were approached by some members of Garda Síochána, and sorry for cutting across you, but I don't want to lose this, was it to pat you in the back, to whisper in your ear, keep her lit, John? Or was it to say, watch your back? Or was it to say, hey, it's nice to hear someone speaking up? What was the approach? What was the driver behind the approach?
They were very willing participants in the protest. They are concerned about the future of our country. They are they are disgusted about the uncontrolled, illegal invasion of our country. Because that's what it is. We are being invaded. We are at war for the survival of the Irish race. I can't put it any simpler than that. No, these people are fully on board, with what this movement is trying to achieve.
When you look at the Guards nowadays, and this is going off tangent a little bit, but the good thing about these live streams is they're not fixed and they're not rigid. And by the way, everyone that's leaving reams and reams of comments, brilliant, keep it up. I'm glancing at them out of the corner of one eye, and thank you for the people that are supporting the channel as well. I acknowledge it. I'm sorry if I don't do it on the spot, but it's hard when you're in mid-flow conversation. But let's talk about the Guards. I seen an article today where several people had said how disappointed they were that they had reached a certain point in recruitment to become members of Garda Síochána, but they were turned down. One girl was turned down because she had a slightly visible tattoo at the back of her neck around about the collar line. Another guy had laser eye surgery at the cost of €4,500 to improve his eyesight to join the Guards, but he was turned down. And an older man who I believe served with the Irish Defence Force was turned down because he didn't have an adequate leaving certificate. Okay, so despite the fact that he had reached a certain point, they said they couldn't sign him off because his education wasn't up to point. And he made the relevant comment to say, well, there's people passing through Templemore at this point in time, and they're let's just say new to the parish. How can you verify their education and their credentials from wherever it was they came from? How do you go about getting a verification on something like that?
You can't. Simply put, you can't. The cases that you've outlined to me, it's utterly ridiculous. I suspect they were all white people. I'm just hazarding a guess. But listen, it's just they are now recruiting in iPass centres.
And they claim whenever Drew Harris was pinched about that. Drew Harris is the commissioner of Garda Síochána, but has a background in the RUC or the PSNI, the Royal Ulster Constabulary / Police Service of Northern Ireland. He is now the de facto commissioner until around about September. He claims that was news to him, and he was looking around, I remember, over his shoulders as if to say, can someone back me up on this? Surely that couldn't have happened. But it turns out it was the case. They were actively recruiting, or at least, how would you say, propagandizing the Guards in iPass centres with refugees and internal protection applicants. We don't know who the hell half them are.
We have no idea. I saw some of the the new Guards yesterday operating along the parade route.
Now, in fairness, I presume that they're very, very good, very qualified people. I mean, I can't doubt their qualifications, but I know that recently enough in Templemore, there were people taken in, there were people recruited to An Garda Síochána without any vetting. They were so desperate to get people into Templemore that they fast-tracked them, and they didn't even carry out. It wasn't a case of, they didn't even carry out partial vetting in advance of bringing these people into Templemore. My information is that there was zero vetting of a lot of people that entered Templemore in the last 6 months or so. Zero vetting. Now, I know it's in the public domain that there was partial vetting. My information is that there was zero vetting of these people in advance of them entering the Garda Training College. When I joined in Garda Síochána, I've said this several times, it was looked upon as a vocation. Okay, now it's merely just a job, another job. That's it. In 1989, they changed their recruitment process. They didn't want to take any, kind of thick, ignorant bogmen like me. They wanted to bring in more educated people. They wanted to bring in people with degrees. Okay, and these people were sold a lie. They were told that if they joined in Garda Síochána, they would be fast tracked. They would have been fast tracked for promotion. And they joined in their thousands. And when they joined in Garda Síochána, they realized that, it was the who you know system led to your promotion and not what you know. And that's when the disillusionment really started, I think, in the late 80s, early 90s, mid 90s. It's an absolute scandal what's happening within Garda Síochána. I think
sorry, John, go ahead.
No. Well, our last Minister for Justice, she didn't exactly inspire great confidence in the public.
No. And of course, she actually increased her vote share at the last election, if the polls are to be believed. And now she's got her claws into the education, and she's on a mission to stop children from having mobile phones and spending €9 million on mobile phone pouches to enforce in our schools. That's what Helen McEntee's business is these days.
Just when you thought she couldn't do any more damage, she was sent into the Department of Education. Really, it's, you couldn't make this up, hate speech, Helen. She was the driving force behind the hate speech bill. And by the way, to paraphrase the great Jerry Adams, that bill hasn't gone away, and they are planning to introduce an even more robust hate crime act in addition to the enactment of the hate speech act. They're planning more legislation in this area, really to end what little free speech we have left in the country. They are determined to dilute and to destroy our rights to free speech. You couldn't make this up.
There seems to, it's like, I don't know if you remember the movie Star Wars or not, but in the very first one, the original one, there was a scene where they all ended up in what was called the trash compactor. Okay, so they all ended up, they escaped from the Darth Vader. They all ended up in this disgusting hole of a place where all the trash went, and then the walls started to close in. Okay, the walls were closing in, and they were waist deep in crap, and there was basically no way out unless there was an outside intervention. It feels sometimes, and I'm not trying to paint a dark picture of this, but many people feel the walls are closing in and they're knee deep in crap, and they're sinking with the government foot or jackboot resting on the top of their heads. Okay, so I want to switch back, if I can, going from Star Wars to O'Connell Street, or to Custom House, or Custom Square, or Custom House down in Dublin yesterday. I have a little clip here, and I'm not going to play crowd footage. You can go online and see crowd footage to the cows come home. There was lots of great speakers on there yesterday. I'm not going to highlight any individual speakers. I want to take some of the points, and this is just a short clip from the organizer of the Dublin protest, a certain Malachy Steenson. He took to the stage, and I want to cut straight into the point where he starts to address, okay, people are wanting more. People want more. Now, what is going to be delivered to them by this nationalist movement? So I want to play this, John. I might pause it at points along there. People listening to what's being said, because these are the questions that you want to have answered. So let's listen to Malachy from under the gazebo on the Dublin protest yesterday.
People want to know where we go from here. And we have been engaged right throughout this country with talks on progressing this movement. We have taken part in the IFP's initiative to bring people closer together and to unify into some grouping. The working title that we've run this rally under and that we're pursuing this project under is Garda Johnny. And I can think of no other title that reflects exactly what we have. Love of Ireland. That's all we need. We don't need a fancy title, because that's why we're here. Love of Ireland, love of family, love of our children, and love of our future. As one of the earlier speakers announced, the next major rally is in Waterford, I think on the weekend of the 26th of July. The one after that is in Galway on the weekend of the August bank holiday. I think it's the 2nd of August. Everybody should do their best to get to those two rallies.
Let's pause it there, actually. Okay, let's backpedal a little bit here and dissect what he said. So I was just jotting down a few words there. So the first thing is talks are ongoing. Okay, talks are ongoing. Okay. Mentions the IFP, I believe that stands for the Irish Freedom Party. And let me just go on record here. I'm not affiliated to any of these parties. I don't contact any of these parties. I'm not endorsing any of these parties. I'm commenting on what these parties are saying. I'm putting it to you people for you to give me your thoughts and opinions on it. Okay. So talked about an IFP initiative. He talked about unification of the smaller grassroots nationalist parties. He talked about a new working title, Garda Johnny, Love of Ireland. Fair enough. Simple title, probably sums up as best as anything what the movement is or should be about. Then he went on to talk about Waterford and Galway. So more protests coming, talks ongoing, throwing it out there. Should we have moved past the talking point by now, or is it just simply this is still a very organic grassroots movement that just needs to take time to develop organically? It's finding its own feet, it's moving at its own pace, or do you think it's the deliverables haven't been there as yet, or are we on course? In your opinion,
this movement is growing organically. Yes, it is. But I think these protests started a long time ago. Like, I mean, 1 year is a long time, really, in the context of what we're trying to do. We're trying to save our country. Now, these little groups can all get together, but we have to have a coherent leadership structure put in place with people in charge of this movement that are not going to frighten the horses. And what I mean by that is, we're going to have people that are, that can gain the respect of a majority of people in this country. I previously floated the idea of one of the very few TDs in Dáil Éireann, that should come forward and really throw their weight behind this movement. One TD in particular, and I've never met this lady, but I respect her greatly, is a lady called Carol Nolan. And if Carol Nolan were to come forward and offer to lead this movement, I can give you a guarantee she would bring over 90% of the people that attended yesterday's protest and that attended the big protest on the 26th of April last. She would bring them. They would follow her. People are crying out for leadership, but it has to be the right form of leadership, Rick. It has to be, these people have got to have gravitas. Whoever takes over this movement has got to have gravitas. Okay. Now, I don't mean that as a comment. I don't mean that to be disrespectful of anybody involved in this movement. We are all involved in this fight together. Okay. We are fighting for the survival of the Irish race. Right. Malachy Steenson is somebody I also respect greatly. He's a great man. Now, I raised this issue. I challenged Peadar Tóibín at a meeting within the last couple of months in Monaghan. Okay, I asked him, Peadar, why will you not come out and stand with the people in this new Irish nationalist movement, the only Irish nationalist movement that we have in this country at the moment. And he said no, because of some of the people connected with the movement, he couldn't be associated with them. And then he went on to say, well, when he was on about, oh, well, I was in the anti-water charges movement, and we achieved great things. And I interjected and I says, Pather, I was involved in the anti-water charges movement, and there were people associated with that movement that you wouldn't exactly bring home to tea either. Okay. Now, this kind of a la carte approach by the very few politicians that I do respect in Dáil Éireann, it can't go on. We need these people to stand up, to come forward and get involved in this movement, because we are facing the demise of the Irish race in this country, and a country without Irish people will no longer be Ireland. Now, having said that, the Independent Ireland attended a meeting, at City West within the last couple of weeks. I think Ken O'Flynn was there. I think Michael Collins was there as well, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
Now, that was a very, very positive development. But I am just saying, I'm appealing to these to the very few TDs in Dáil Éireann that are Ireland first, that support an Ireland first agenda. I'm appealing to these TDs to come forward, stand up, be brave, be counted, and stop cowering away like Pather Tobin. He's afraid to be associated with certain people attached to this movement. Okay, that's utter and complete. That's rubbish. That's garbage. The people I have met at these, I'm not an extremist. Okay, I consider myself an ordinary, average Irish person. All right, the people that I have met at all of these protests are hardworking, decent Irish people, decent Irish men and women, right? That are scared to death about what's happening in this country. They are scared for the futures of their children and for their grandchildren, and rightly so, because this country, it is sinking each and every day. We are going further down into this dark sinkhole.
We are. And I'm just, I don't know if you can see it or not, but I just want to pick up on the chat in general. And by the way, irrespective of what your opinions are, you're welcome to express them in this chat. And I'm noting this, generally speaking. When you mention a name, or maybe I mention a name, you'll have a contingent of people that think, thumbs up, that guy's a great guy. That guy's one of the best. John Wilson's coming on tonight. John Wilson for president. John Wilson's coming on tonight. He's just an ex-cop, and once a cop, always a cop. You're going to polarize people. So you mentioned Pather Tobin, you mentioned Malachy Steenson, you mentioned Carol Nolan. It doesn't matter who you mention. Literally, it doesn't matter who you mention. If you throw it out there to a wide enough audience, there's such a massive spread of opinion there, literally, that it doesn't matter who you feel tonight as a potential candidate. You're going to have a lot of people jumping in behind you saying, John, good call. And an awful lot of people are going to be throwing rocks at you saying it's not. So let me ask this question for you and for the people in the chat. One thing you said to me that was striking the first time we met, okay, and you said a lot of things to give you your credit that stuck in my head. And one of them was that Ireland is one charismatic leader away from a revolution.
Yeah.
Now, set aside again, that'll trigger people. We don't need a leader. We can lead ourselves. Put that to the side just for a minute. Does the person, whoever that person may be, male or female, whoever it may be, if that person comes along, are they going to have to be almost coming in from off center, off field, almost like they're going to have credentials. They're going to have credibility, but almost as if to say they don't have baggage from the party that they used to belong to or the organization that they used to belong to. Does that make sense? They're going to have more of a clean slate.
I'm a long time following politics in Ireland. I'm following politics in Ireland for over 50 years, since 1973. Okay, I was less than 10 years of age when my Uncle John was elected to Dáil Éireann for Cavan and Monaghan. Okay, now I know how the Irish people think. They are not, unfortunately, we don't politically in Ireland, we don't like taking chances. Okay, we like to stick to the old reliables like Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael. Latterly, Sinn Féin have been doing very well in Ireland, but the Sinn Féin vote really, it's not a solid Republican vote that they have here, because they have lost a lot of real Republicans over the last number of years because of their approach to the uncontrolled, the mass uncontrolled immigration into Ireland. A lot of their support, it's soft support. Okay, now we need, if we don't put in place a coherent leadership structure of how will I say, people that of individuals that the vast majority of people in this country are going to be drawn to and are going to listen to, then we're not going to go very, very far. In addition, there's only one subject, and that's what's happening. That's the mass uncontrolled immigration into this country, the destruction of our country, the destruction of our race. We're only 0.06% of the world population, okay? We are going to be a minority in this country very, very soon, okay? And in 20 years' time, as I've said many times, we'll have a fair idea of where we're heading at that stage, okay? Now, we won't be heading in the right direction if we continue along the road, that our open borders, quisling, traitorous government are bringing us, okay? Now, people can listen. The average Joe and Josephine in this country are not going to vote for people that are perceived as being radicals, okay? Unfortunately, the Fighting Irish was a derogatory term given to Irish people in America that were drinking and fighting on the streets. That's where the Fighting Irish term came from, okay? I know there was a regiment in the American Civil War called the Fighting Irish, but the term Fighting Irish was a derogatory term. We are more like the people in the UK than we like to admit, okay? In Great Britain, the Tories and the Conservatives have ruled for many, 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 many years. Okay, I know the Liberal Party, the original Liberal Party, used to be a force back in the 19th century, okay, and in the early part of the 20th century. But by and large, people stick to what they know. They stick to the Tories and they stick to the Labour Party. Okay, we are very, very like the people in the UK in that regard. Okay, people. That's why I said if we can get, and I hate using the term respectable people, right? If we can persuade some of these kind of people in independent Ireland and the great Carol Nolan to come on board with us, all right, we will achieve greatness. Okay, that's not to say that some charismatic, articulate person is going to come from the ranks of our current protest movement. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't mean to be derogatory. I'm not being derogatory about anybody, right? But we need people with gravitas to step forward and take this movement by the scruff of the neck and lead the tens and tens of thousands of people that have protested in this country, the hundreds of thousands of people that have protested in this country over the last 12 to 18 months. Okay. Now, some of the people I spoke to yesterday, they're not going to protest again. Okay. When the next big protest is called, they're more than likely to come along and protest again. But there was a degree of apathy among some of the people there yesterday. Okay, yeah. They want a plan of action put in place. Now, civil disobedience. They want a campaign of civil disobedience launched in this country.
Can I stop you right there, because that's going to move on to another thing that I touched on at the start, maybe just before you came in, and I'm not trying to be rude to cut across you, but you raised so many points. I don't want to let anything slip. So when you say something that's striking, I say, okay, let's stop there. So you said that in your experience yesterday, there were a lot of people there. A lot of people were very happy. A lot of people were very expectant, but some people were becoming a little bit despondent, which goes back to what I'm saying, not because of the crowd that was there or not because of the day in Dublin itself, but because it's getting to the point now that meat needs to be put onto the bones, and it needs to be put on pretty soon, because I'm just a big believer in seizing the moment. There's sometimes in life, John, as you'll know yourself, and I'm not trying to be a guru here, but things just line up, okay? Everything just seems to line up at the right place, at the right time, with the right people. And if you miss it, if you're too early, if you try and grab it too early, or you leave it too late, you blow it, all right? So this is Rick Munn talking here. I'm seeing a little window. I'm looking through this window of great potential right now.
Yeah.
Great
Yeah.
potential. But I'm
Yeah.
realizing that that window is starting to shrink. And
Mhm.
if that window shrinks to the point where it closes completely, it could be hard to get back to this point again where you can rally people and get momentum behind it. So there is
Yeah.
a sense of urgency there that maybe people are becoming despondent because things aren't happening at the right pace.
I mean, I could sit here and I could say that, oh, everything was great and everybody was happy and everybody was, you know, they were delighted and the march and then the left and they were elated leaving. Okay, fine. But people that I spoke to yesterday, they want to know what's next. Okay, they want a plan of action put in place, and just in case there's somebody thinking about engaging in violent acts, anybody that engages in violence, who's associated to this movement, will be fast-tracked to the Special Criminal Court. Okay,
Yeah.
They won't have an opportunity to go before a jury of their peers. Okay, they will be fast-tracked to the Special Criminal Court. We are seen, our traitorous government see us as being the problem here. They see us as being enemies of the state, when in actual fact, I mean, it's the other way around, okay? They are engaged in a campaign to destroy this country. I don't know whether you want to get onto the EU Migration Pact later on, but I can tell you this. Our government are engaged and they're not hiding what they're doing. There was another 7,500 people are getting citizenship this week below in Killarney. Okay, listen, between our low birth rate, the fact that the government are giving out Irish citizenship so liberally, and like coming to this country is a privilege. It's not a right. Okay,
Yeah.
But our government are giving out citizenship like the old saying goes, like snuff at a wig. Okay, they're not hiding what they're doing here, right? They're not hiding what they're doing here. They are leading us down a path to the destruction of the Irish race. Now, getting back to answer your question, I think we have a window here of we have about 6 months left. If we don't have a coherent leadership structure put in place with people of gravitas at the helm, the protests, people will start to drift away. In not just one or two, they'll start to drift away in droves. Okay.
Yeah.
I apologize to anybody if I sound like a pessimist, but I'm a long time around. I'm a long time. Yeah. I'm a long time observer of politics in this country.
Mm-hmm. And it is about, listen, momentum is the key. It's like a car, you know, if your car breaks down and you need somebody to give you a push to get it started, you get a few boys in behind, and at the start, everyone's putting their shoulder to it at the back and straining and grunting. But once that car starts to roll, okay, it becomes easier to move it. It picks up. I think we've moved past that point where we're getting the momentum going, but that window is shrinking. And to go back, I've highlighted a comment there. Thank you to Maximilian for leaving this comment. And at the point I jumped in when you were in full flow last time there, you were starting to speak about a campaign of civil disobedience, about possible public disorder, but not violence, not breaking the law, because if they take you and I, if you and I get involved in something illegal, they will jump on us both from a very great height. We will be taken off the streets, where we'll be put into a prison cell where we're useless to anyone, and that will tick a few boxes and weaken the resistance even further. The same goes for anyone else that's listening here. So Maximilian says the country, this is, and you can tell me what you think, the country needs to be brought to a standstill. Places need to be blocked, all major ports and train stations. And I've seen a few posters already going up today where people are starting to call for civil action or massive blockades in ports to disrupt infrastructure without violence. What do you think about that suggestion?
Yeah, fantastic. I fully subscribe to the ideas put forward there by that poster. But just to reiterate again, and I know people can get carried away, I am telling you now, the government are waiting for an opportunity to enact more draconian legislation than they have already put in place. And anybody that's deemed to be involved in any form of violence attached to the new Irish nationalist movement will be fast-tracked to the Special Criminal Court. And if they are convicted, they'll be sent away for a long, long time. Okay, you saw what happened down in County Roscommon. There was an eviction was thwarted by a group of local people and whatever. There was violence involved. Okay, those men are doing, one of those men doing 15 years in prison. They're all doing long prison sentences, and that was a clear message to anybody else who might be tempted to get involved in preventing evictions in this country. Okay, I support people that are involved in the anti-eviction movement, but I'm telling you now, anybody that's convicted of being involved in violence attached to the only Irish nationalist movement that there is, which is this organic movement of great Irish men and Irish women, they will be dealt with very, very severely.
And as a message, you will be scapegoated, I would say, much the same way last year after the Southport riots, when that Axel Rubelkana, or whoever his name was, attacked and stabbed those little girls. There was massive rioting that happened after that, and the people that were involved in it, or even the people that commented on it or posted memes about it on social media, are facing, in some cases, 18 months to 3 years in prison, as to set an example, to fire a shot across the bows of anybody else that would consider doing such a thing. So when you tag it along with violence, irrespective of how incensed you are, you'll be set up, you'll be made an example of, and you'll go down for a very, very long period of time. And I think that's what, let's just say, I'm not saying that they're willing that to happen, but if it did happen, they wouldn't be disappointed, because they would have some people that they could hold up as an example. There's Wilson and Munn in the dock. They had the audacity to do this. They flared up or incited violence, which we're not doing. But if we did, they would have a field day with either you, me, or anybody else that's listening here.
Yeah, we need the mass mobilization of the ordinary men and ordinary women of this country. We need to bring people out in vast numbers. We need a 1 million person march in our capital city. We need over 1 million people turn out on the streets. And if we can get in excess of 1 million people onto the streets of Dublin, that will send shockwaves through our political establishment. At present, Micheál Martin is smirking away there to his heart's content. Okay, he's smirking away. He has the mainstream media on his side. He has Garda Síochána on his side. But let's put it this way: there are only in the region of 13,500 to 15,000 members of Garda Síochána. We have, we're meant to have policing by consent, but that's drifting away further every day. I think we're now, and Garda Síochána is rapidly becoming a paramilitary police force. That's what they are, you know. I mean, it's shocking how Garda Síochána has changed over, you know, in the last 10 years or so. When I was a guard, it was totally different. You know, we saw the public order unit below in Newton and Kennedy, where they just came along, and I mean, they actually used that as a training exercise. One local guard could have dealt with that situation. One local guard could have come out. He could have had the fire extinguished, and he could have talked. He could have spoke to the people. Those people weren't violent, for God's sake.
No. But again, maybe without being conspiratorial about this, which I halfway am, maybe that they didn't want the fire to be extinguished there. Maybe they wanted things to be inflamed so they could bring in more draconian measures down the line, or clamp down on what people say online. I'm just throwing this out there as a suggestion. What do you people think about that? You know, and here's the other thing too. And you can correct me if I'm wrong about this, because I accumulate a lot of facts. I don't have them to hand here. But when Drew Harris is supposed to exit his role as commissioner of Garda Síochána in September, I think it is. Obviously, he'll be replaced, but there's talk that the replacement may be someone from outside of Ireland, number one, and also, depending on the candidates that apply, they may not even have a policing background. So in a worst case scenario, the next commissioner of Garda Síochána could be someone who's non-Irish with no experience in the police. That doesn't sound, it sounds ludicrous, but in this day and age, it wouldn't shock me if that was the headline news tomorrow morning.
I think Andrew Harris is leaving soon, and they're having difficulty, I think, finding a replacement for him. Now, I have no doubt that somebody will be appointed in due course. Listen, he was never wanted by the membership from Garda Síochána. They never wanted him. Now he was brought in. He was brought in for a good reason, because Garda Síochána was a dysfunctional mess. And he was brought in to root out the corruption within the organisation and to put proper structures in place. Now he has succeeded to a certain extent, because he did clamp down on bad old habits that were there. You know, a guard can no longer approach a colleague now to square a summons or to strike out a prosecution. That was going on wholesale for all of the time that I was in Garda Síochána, you know, doing favours for people and kind of pulling summonses and striking out charges and that kind of stuff. So we saw with the penalty point scandal, for God's sake. You know, I'm not going to plough over old ground, or to plough over ground already ploughed well. But listen, unfortunately, Andrew Harris, he's been captured by woke ideology as well. And he tried to bring in regulations where a guard who wouldn't use the pronouns of another guard, if that other guard wanted to be called it or whatever, I don't know, they, them, or it or whatever, that the guard would have been disciplined and could have been sacked, really. So in other words, if a male guard decided he was going to, if John came in someday and decided he was going to, Garda John came in someday and he decided he wanted to be called Garda Joanna the next day, and if his colleagues didn't actually go along with his fantasy, they would have been disciplined and quite possibly would have been sacked from Garda Síochána. You know, this woke ideology, kind of gender ideology poison, he tried to implement that in the Garda Síochána. But in Garda Síochána is now on about, it's all about diversity now and inclusion, diversity, not diversity of thought. I mean, we need diversity of thought in this country, but no. You mentioned the pride flags earlier on. It was disgusting to see our national flag, the pride flag, over the GPO yesterday, flying, you know, given equal prominence, equal billing with our great tricolour. It is just disgusting. And outside the customs house, on the roof of the customs house, the Progress pride flag was flying alongside our national flag. Absolutely disgusting, and galling for anybody who knows about their Irish history. You know, and I mean, I'm sure that 1916 leaders are spinning in their graves. You know, it is terrible what's happening to this country. We are
it is, if I can remember, about half an hour ago, we paused Malachy Steenson. I said, let's get some thoughts and opinions. I have another minute or so of this clip that I want to play. We got up as far as the point where he was talking about Waterford. There's another march planned for Waterford, which is new ground for a big march, I think, at least this year. And then another one for the August bank holiday weekend. I think it's the 2nd of August in Galway. So they're moving around a little bit. We've had Dublin twice in terms of a really big day. We've had Cork, that obviously we were down at. We're going to have Waterford, and then we're going to have Galway. So let's hear the remainder of what he says. It's just a minute because it's relevant to what's coming next year.
As we go through this period, some of the most crucial issues facing us are housing, health, education. None of those issues can be resolved in any way unless we close the borders to IPASS applications and also to any other work visa applications. This country simply cannot sustain any further increase in population. I would ask people here, because some people are finding it difficult to contact us. At the moment, if you just go to one of the websites we have, malachy.ie is probably the easiest one to find. Send a DM to that with your email and your details, and we will be in contact with you. I also wanted again to thank, because none of this would get any publicity without our citizen journalists, led principally by Philip Dwyer, Stephen Delaney and many, many others. I want to thank the international media who give us more coverage than the national media.
Okay, so that's the end of his speech. Two things I want to pick up on in that. And number one being in reverse order. He talks about citizen journalists. He talks about people reporting on this from the grassroots level. Obviously, that's what I'm trying to do. There's legions of people out there doing sterling work, bringing this to the attention of the masses that otherwise they wouldn't get to know what's going on in the streets of Dublin or the streets of Cavan or the streets of Castleblaney. Okay, and then he talks about there's no more room. There's no more room. And I want to move away from Dublin now. And I want to talk about the potential influx that we're going to have it's not guaranteed, but with everything that's going on in the Middle East, with what's happening in Iran in particular, we could be set up for Ukraine on steroids. And another thing, by the way, if I can just add this in, just for information purposes, there's a lot of comments. I've been trying to keep an eye on them as John and I have been talking, but Big Niall McConnell has been mentioned several times in terms of politics or a viable front runner for some kind of a party. I'm trying to arrange a live stream with Niall to talk about Sean Nairn. Hopefully we can get that done sometime over the next week. We'll focus in on what he's doing, and you may love him or hate him. You're going to hear what he has to say, what his views are, what his focus is, and potentially why you should get behind that, because Sean Nairn isn't a party that's named a lot, at least from what I can see, along with these other usual suspects that we're seeing, the name drops at the various rallies. But it's a very viable party because he's out there at every protest. He's live streaming every protest, or pretty much someone from his crowd is. And he's also distributing a Christian nationalist newspaper, as well as running a YouTube family, as well as being a father, I believe, of a young family. So he's there, but maybe he's not exposed enough at the minute. Not that I have much of a platform, but at least it could maybe try and, shine a little bit of light his direction.
I wrote an article for his most recent edition, for the most recent edition of his newspaper, and I was proud to do so. And I think Niall McConnell deserves great credit, and he deserves to be mentioned. He's in the same realm as Philip Dwyer, who's another wonderful individual. Niall deserves great credit. He travels everywhere. I mean, at the drop of a hat, he traveled down to Castleblaney, he traveled down to RD. He travels all over the country, at enormous expense to himself and his family. And he deserves great credit, and he deserves to be thanked by the people of Ireland and the people of this great movement. Listen, we can only rely on our citizen journalists. We can't rely on the mainstream media. And just as an example of that, I was listening to the Brendan O'Connor show last Sunday on RTE. It's important to keep in touch to find out what the enemy are talking about. In the course of that program, there was a journalist called Philip Ryan, who's a very good journalist. I mean, I've followed him for many years because he was involved in covering the whistleblowing scandal about 10 years ago or so. And Philip mentioned about Denmark. He spoke about Denmark, and he said that the Danish government have almost totally stopped the uncontrolled illegal immigration into Denmark. And immediately he was shut down by the presenter. Immediately. That's where we are. We cannot rely on the mainstream media. They parrot the latest, whatever the government narrative is. We can only rely now on our citizen journalists. And Philip Dwyer and Niall McConnell are two of the best. They are actually the two very best in the country at the moment.
Thanks a lot, John.
And yourself. No, but I'm
only winding you up. Listen, I don't even look at myself. I've said this before. Some people can give you names. I'm just an observer. I have a platform that I try and bring things to people's attention, try and direct spotlights towards other people. So I'm tongue in cheek when I say that.
You're too modest. You're too modest.
No, I'm not trying to be. I'm not even trying. It's not about trying to be modest. Genuinely speaking, I'm happy to just sit, observe, comment, give a platform, and then move on to something else. Current affairs, relevant events, because I have my family lives on this island. My future is on this island. I am invested in success in the things that we talk about as well. So I'll hopefully get something organized with Niall over the next week. If you check my posts on my community tab, you'll see about it. I want to look at one more quick video that might result in those of you who are listening, who are incensed at the way things are, the lack of housing, the lack of investment in infrastructure, the lack of opportunity for young people. This could be worse impacted again by what's happening as a result of the Iran attacks. Now, I want to play a very quick video clip of Simon Harris. I believe this was recorded tonight. He is extremely concerned. He is extremely upset. He is extremely passionate, but not about anything Irish, about what's going on in the Middle East. So let's listen to what he says and look at it in light of what might be coming our way. Okay.
Overnight in the Middle East has made a volatile situation even more dangerous, and the very real risk now of a spiral of escalation is greater than ever before. The risk here of this conflict overspilling into the region more widely, and indeed the impact of global security is very real and very acute. As I spoke today at their request with the Iranians, I had talks with the Iranian Deputy Foreign Minister. I took the opportunity to speak with him because I wanted to convey in the strongest possible terms the European view and the Irish view that we need to see a return to dialogue, and that we need Iran to also show restraint here because of the volatility.
So he's mumbling.
So Irish embassies have been working very hard on the ground to try and assist Irish citizens in both Israel and Iran, and I want to really thank our diplomats at the outset for the extraordinary work they've been doing in very difficult and often very dangerous circumstances. Right now there is an evacuation underway of 15 Irish citizens and dependents, 15 people. And let's not forget the situation in Gaza, where I think we saw more people die in Gaza in one day than had died
so now he's on about Gaza
during the past week as a result of the conflict. So the genocide in Gaza is ongoing. The starvation of children in Gaza is ongoing.
So without getting into the ins and outs of Gaza, Rafah, and everything else that's going on there, he started off talking about Iran. He started off talking about taking 15 Irish citizens out of Iran, and now he's managed to squeeze in about the ongoing genocide in Gaza. It seems to be the only thing that doesn't get Harris or Micheál Martin worked up. Like you and I might get worked up when we have our conversations, you know, in the car. It's very lively. You and I get into lively conversations. We get kind of foaming at the mouth about certain issues. When's the last time you seen Simon Harris foaming at the mouth about the housing disaster, the housing apocalypse that's happening in Ireland, or the waiting lists, or the amount of children that are being experimented on in Irish hospitals? Why does he not lower his tone and rub his hands together for drama and furrow his brow when it comes to stuff like that? But when it comes to the Middle East, weighing in on Iran, oh, he's there.
First of all, the fact that he's equating the despotic Iranian regime with a Western democracy, I think that tells its own story. The man hasn't got a clue. I doubt if he could find Iran on a map. But anyhow, he wasn't talking to the Irish people. He was trying to impress our EU masters. I mean, listen, he is one of the weakest Taoiseach we've ever had in this country. And I add in Varadkar and Micheál Martin into the trio of the worst Taoiseach we've ever had in this country. But as I've said many times, weak men are dangerous men. He just absolutely, I mean, Micheál Martin and himself are very worried about borders. The borders of everyone else's country, but not, not the Irish borders. They are just, he's an absolute disgrace. He will go down in history as one of the worst leaders in Irish history, along with the other two geniuses, Martin and Varadkar. He's just letting us know, that they're going to bring in, they're going to allow in thousands of refugees from Gaza and anyone else that wants to. I mean, in actual fact, anyone that comes here from Iran as a claim to be a refugee, I think should be watched very, very carefully, because this despotic regime is despised by, I'd say, between 80 and 90% of the Persian people. They hate them. They can't wait for the mullahs to be destroyed and got rid of, you know.
Yeah.
Listen, what more can one say? He's a despicable, traitorous politician. He is betraying Ireland the same as the rest of them are betraying Ireland. He's obsessed with this woke ideology crap. I'm sure he has a little progress pride flag flying in his office. You know,
probably got pride underpants on. You talked about the amount of people that could be coming here, and you know, people have got a taste. I think at the minute, John, people have had a taste of what's flooding into Ireland at the minute. But these, the people that the so-called government of Ireland, people that are in, you know, in control of the country, as it were, at least that's what they claim they are. They have much bigger, much more despicable and sinister plans, as evidenced, for example, in the purchase of City West that they claim was
and the 50 acres.
And the 50 acres, but they're talking about this, and this is my tip to anyone listening. Watch out for these three words: program for government. Program for government. It doesn't sound like much. It sounds a little bit boring. It sounds a little bit librarian, but program for government means destruction of Ireland. And I seen an article today about Athlone. Okay, Athlone. And by 2040, which is around about 15 years from now, and I was going to go over this article with you tonight, but I wanted to keep it focused on Dublin and this issue of the Middle East with refugees. By 2040, they want to turn Athlone into a 15-minute city. Yes, they named it as a 15-minute city on RTE. They wanted to boost the population up to around about 100,000 in Athlone. Now, that's not going to happen by young Irish men and women multiplying organically, John. How the hell else are they going to get the population of Athlone to 100k by 2040?
Well, one wouldn't require the investigative skills of Hercule Poirot to know how that's going to happen. Micheál Martin announced at the weekend that he's going to increase the children's allowance for parents having 3 or more children. Now, you know, are they going to be Irish? Is that money going to be given to Irish mothers only? No. They're not hiding. We are losing our country in real time. They are determined to increase the population of this country, I'd say, by up to 5 or 6 million. They want the population of Ireland to be about 11 or 12 million people. And they often quote the population around the famine times here, you know, it is in around 10 million at the time or whatever. Listen, we are, and they are banking on the Irish people just going ahead with going along with their devious plans. They know there'll be a certain amount of protest. They have factored that into the equation. But I think, and that's why it's so important for the Irish people to come forward and be counted and not leave all the heavy lifting to your neighbours. Get out. People power does work. And I wish to God Almighty, you know, I wish we could get that through to the majority of Irish people. People power does work. There is strength in numbers. Okay.
And locality, John. I think there's a danger that the focus is understandably so. People like spectacle, people like big events. Okay, so they're more likely to turn into a hurling final, for example, in Croke Park than they are to go to a local hurling match to watch their local team. But the local team needs support as well. That's where the future generation or the stars come from local teams, right? And if you use that analogy with the limited, and there's a lot of people in this chat and yourself have been involved in various protests for a very, very long time and can testify to this. But if the emphasis, for example, is on Cork, Dublin, Galway City, Waterford, that's fine in terms of drawing general attention there. Yeah. But from me anyway, the most intense feeling I felt of nationalism and community and power has been, for example, at Carrickmacross, or has been
Are
in
they?
more smaller, or are they, or
Pennsylvania.
smaller
Yes, yeah.
localized, but they tend to be overlooked. So are we missing a trick here in that, I'm not saying everybody does it, by the way, but these local community groups, they need to be inspired. They need to be encouraged as well, because it's places like Athlone that are going to be really, really, really hammered even harder than they are at the minute than, for example, like a Dublin that has already seen a real bashing, or Cork that has seen a bashing. This tidal wave, this tsunami could be coming to somewhere like Athlone or some of the smaller towns, and that could be enough to sink them.
Well, we heard the two ministers speaking last week, and they announced a 25-year plan. So, I mean, anyone, there wasn't any doubt about where we're heading. You know, that statement should have been a wake-up call. They have a 25-year plan. They are planning to make the City West complex into an enormous plantation centre. Okay, an enormous plantation centre. And they are planning to put similar centres around the country. You mentioned one, was it Sligo? You mentioned there's one.
Yeah, there's one in Sligo, and there's another big one. There's one under construction in Sligo at the minute. Multiple 3-story buildings, effectively communities being constructed in Sligo, and another one is being earmarked, and building is underway in Galway City as well.
We had an opportunity to take real control of our borders by rejecting the EU Migration Pact, by opting out of the EU Migration Pact. Okay, in the same way that Denmark has opted out of the Immigration Pact, and Denmark have now taken control of their borders, and they have reduced the mass uncontrolled immigration into their country. But for some reason, our cowardly government refused to do so, and they wouldn't give us a referendum, because they knew that it would have been overwhelmingly defeated by the Irish public, in the same way that the birthright citizenship referendum was heavily defeated in 2004. And by the way, and that referendum was brought in by Michael McDowell when he was the Minister for Justice. But that referendum would not be held today. Micheál Martin would not hold a birthright citizen referendum today. He would not hold a birthright citizenship referendum today in this country, because he wouldn't be able to control the people. It would also be heavily defeated today. I just can't understand their mentality. They are not working on behalf of the Irish people. They are not. And that's why it galls me and it sickens me that there are so many of our people. And I alluded to the population of the Greater Dublin area earlier on, 2.1 million people. I can't understand why so many Irish people are just willing to go along with the flow and not get involved in the only Irish nationalist movement that we have in Ireland today. The only resistance movement we have in Ireland today, and so many people are so reluctant to get involved. It's unfortunately, it's something in the Irish mentality that people will not put their heads above the parapet. They will not be counted. People power works. The anti-water charges movement to date has been the largest people's movement in Irish history, and yet that movement achieved greatness. I mean, people are not paying water charges today because of the protests, because of the actions of that movement. But for some reason, and that's why Martin continues to have the smug look on his face. He just we have to find a mechanism to persuade and to convince the vast majority of the Irish people to stand up and be counted, to get out on the streets. Now, listen, there were people on the protest yesterday and in the big protest in last April that never protested before in their lives. And it's organic. Attend one protest, you'll attend the next one. You know what I mean? But we have to go. People in these areas, fantastic people in Carrickmacross, in RD, Mark Brady down there is doing amazing work, as are others. We also have the plan, the IPAS hunters based down there as well. They're doing amazing work. They're going through the planning applications and all of the local county councils to find out the buildings to identify the buildings that have been earmarked as plantation centres. But listen, we only have one chance to save our country.
Yeah.
Oh, we only have one chance to save our country. Tucker Carlson said recently that in 100 years' time, Irish people will be a minority in Ireland. It's not going to take 100 years.
it's not.
Within a mere 2 decades, within a mere 20 years, we are going to know how we're fixed. Okay, if somebody doesn't shout stop, right? If we don't stop the madness, first of all, we have to cease giving out Irish citizenship. Okay, there are influencers from Asia and Africa. They are actively encouraging people to head to Ireland, and they are showing them how to apply for Irish citizenship. Okay, this week alone in Killarney, in the region of almost 2,000 people from India are going to receive Irish citizenship today, tomorrow, and the next day, over the next few days. Okay, I think it's 1,888 or something. Almost 2,000 people from India. Okay, over 7,500 people are going to be made Irish citizens in the next couple of days. We're going to have to stop that. We have cheapened.
Can you imagine, John, in 5 years from now, maybe you could have those citizenship ceremonies that could be Iranians. There could be 5,000 Iranians coming in here. Who knows? And it's, here's the thing. People, I think we're covering the ground that we're covering here tonight. We're just trying to throw out what we think, what we feel, and offer practical suggestions what people can be doing. There's going to be people agree with this. There's going to be people disagreeing with that. But whoever you are that's listening, and I say this with respect as a challenge, ask yourself, am I doing as much as I can in the area that I'm in, with the people that I work with, the people in my family? Am I active in my own community? Could I do a little bit more? Maybe you're not interested. That's fair enough. But a lot of people are teetering on the brink. They're thinking about putting their head over the parapet, but they're not quite there yet. They need to just take the plunge and just get out there and get their hands dirty. So I think if we can get more people moved across the line, or to get the stick, even their nose and their eyes, let alone their full head above the parapet, I think the bottom line is that'll continue to feed into the momentum of what's happening at the minute too. So I suppose time will tell. Time will tell.
Courage is contagious. Okay. And when people prevent an outpass center in their village or town, then move to the next town, move to the next village, keep going. Your work is not done. We have to, this movement is growing organically, but we don't have a lot of time to save our country.
No, we don't. In
the same way, like we have some of our cowardly politicians that are on record as saying that, Ireland is too white. It's not diverse enough. We're too white. It's too white. When was the last time you heard a Nigerian politician standing up in the Nigerian parliament and saying that Nigeria is too black? You've never heard it. There's some kind of, I don't know, when people enter Leinster House, they develop an inferiority complex against their own country, against their own people. It is galling, it is sickening to see so many politicians acting against the interests of the vast majority of Irish people. Now, you mentioned, our education system. How many parents have paid attention? I'm referencing those idiots that were protesting against us yesterday, with no Irish flags to be seen. How many parents have paid attention to what their children were being taught in our schools for the last 20 years or so? I would say not many, right? And those people we saw protesting yesterday are a product of that, because our children have been indoctrinated in our schools for the last number of decades, for the last couple of decades. Okay, they don't believe. Many of our younger people, many of the people that have been educated in our education system over the last 20 years or so, and these people would now be in their late teens, up to their mid to late 30s. They do not believe in borders. They do not believe in nation states. They believe that people in Bangladesh should be able to freely move to Ballinasloe. That's a sad reality, and it's more than a few percent, Rick. There's a substantial minority of people in this country who don't believe in nation states, that don't believe in borders. They don't believe in borders. Okay? These idiots, they have been indoctrinated. Our schools are now madrasas for wokeness and globalism. They're not schools. They are just madrasas for wokeness and globalism. Yeah. That's all they are. They don't teach about Irish history. I'd say most of them have no idea who Michael Collins was, let alone Dan Breen, let alone General Tom Barry.
if you don't know your history and you don't know the past, then how can you move forward with strength and direction and purpose into the future?
Paul Murphy headed off to Egypt last week,
I know.
and I'd say he expected to be greeted by a fanfare, by a fanfare of trumpets over when he arrived in Egypt. He didn't even know his history. The Egyptians, most Egyptians, hate the Palestinians, as do the Jordanians. They don't want anything got to do with them. I mean, the Jordanians allowed in loads of them, you know, a few decades ago, and they tried to overthrow the Jordanian royal family.
You see, that's the thing. Knowledge is power. Knowledge is key. And I suppose, hopefully, some people will have taken some stuff or some learning points, some action points, something to be challenged with away from the conversation that we've had here tonight. We've been going for nearly an hour and a half. There's been consistently up to 800 odd people in the chat tonight, which is amazing for a Monday night. So I just want to also apologize, by the way. I have an apology to make for those people that are listening in. There has been a few aggro shit stirs in the chat, which is always going to be the way, you know, with a live chat with a lot of people in it. So I will work on assigning moderator status to some of the people that would come in here, and just, I don't mind people disagreeing, and I don't mind people, you know, arguing against points that are being made. But when people are in there just being offensive for the sake of it to get attention, it's pathetic, to be quite honest with you. It doesn't bother me as such, but it's the experience that the other people that have to sit through it and read it and get exposed to it in the chat, that's really, it doesn't bother me. I don't give a damn what anybody says. But
constructive criticism is healthy.
Yeah, correct. But trolling and being an asswipe for the sake of it, we get enough of that, John, out there in the real world. We don't need it when we come on these live streams.
Yeah,
so
we need diversity of thought, Rick. Okay.
Yeah, we do, but we don't need
diversity of thought.
We don't need ignoramuses.
We can't change the past, but we can shape the future. We can't change the past, but we can shape the future.
That is as good a message to end this on as any. Thank you again for all those that have tuned in. Thank you to every single person that left a comment. Thank you to those who have gifted memberships. Thank you to those who have left a gift for the channel. Keep an eye on the community post for this No Risk, No Reward channel. Upcoming live streams, I will put up a notification of them. I'll probably have no more than 2 a week. I'm looking at a Monday and a Thursday night, but that's not guaranteed. That's probably what I'll do. Maybe 1 a week, possibly 2 a week. But we're just working on this, John. It's a work in progress. We're refining things, but tonight has been great. It's been great to talk to you again, John, freely about multiple topics. And I
just
appreciate
finally,
yes.
Can I finally say, Rick, the way I finish all of my speeches, this is Ireland, our Ireland, and we will fight like hell to save her.
Amen. Amen to that, Mr. Wilson. So a good way to finish is any. You keep coming up with better ways to finish, but we're definitely going to call it now. So again, for everyone, hit a like button if you want to. Share this live stream with whoever you want. But for now, that's John Wilson. I'm Rick Munn. This is No Risk, No Reward. Over and out.